Yes, everyone, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur here. It's your boys Jack and Dave. And in this video, we're going to be talking about who could be Tottenham's next star this preseason and the season beyond. There's always someone who steps up and breaks out on a preseason tour. It was Lo Celso last year, if you can remember that far back. And even if you were to go further, Lamella shined in plenty of preseasons gone by. So today we'll be discussing one youngster and one player who was perhaps on the fringes of the squad last season, who we think could step up and break out on this preseason tour. Dave, I'm going to pass it off to you. Where would you like to start? Will it be on the fringe player or the youngster?
I'm going to start with Dejan Kuluveski, Jack. I'm going to start on the fringe player. Technically, I class him as a fringe player because come the end of the season, he wasn't a regular in that Spurs 11. There was often times where he appeared off the bench and used in many different positions. So I think that classifies as a fringe player to me. Now, Jack, when it comes to Kuluveski, he is one that does divide the Spurs fan base, leading many to question Kuluveski's suitability to Ange ball because he does not have the attributes that Ange prefers in his wingers, but also the blistering pace that Ange prefers his wingers to have. But I do think that Kuluveski gets a raw deal from the Spurs fan base because he does not possess the pace of a Werner or Johnson or wingers we've had gone by of a Bale or a Lennon. But I do feel like that Kuluveski has attributes that gets strongly overlooked, like close control, the ability to hold up the ball and link up and bring others into play, the ability to be able to carry the ball long distances and get Spurs up the pitch. Combine all that with his outrageous work ethic and his engine to be able to get up and down the pitch. I think a lot of it gets overlooked, and I do think he has a lot of attributes that suit this team that other players in the forward area don't actually currently possess. So I do feel like that he actually gives us a point of difference up there. However, where the questions come in as well is he any better than someone like Werner, Johnson, or Richarlison in the final third, which I think is a fair question and probably what led to many fans' disgruntlement in his performances last season. He showed plenty of promise getting into great positions, especially in front of goal and goal scoring positions, but maybe didn't have that end product. And look, I agree with many people. He should have been much better in terms of in front of goal, but also crossing the ball. But I would argue I think he's a better crosser than someone like Werner and Johnson. You know, to clear up a few things as well, Jack, he doesn't get recognized for the creativity that he brings. One fact is he was one of the most creative players from open play last season from Tottenham Hotspur. Completely gets overlooked. And I don't think having a proper striker up there for him to be able to work off really helped them last season. And you can make the case for others. But where I think Kuluveski is maybe distinguished from the likes of Werner and Johnson is the fact that we've seen it before with Kuluveski. We know he can reach them heights. It's just about getting back to him. And every young player shows inconsistencies. Combine all that with him having the summer off, I think he's going to break out this preseason tour. He's already got 2 assists in 2 games. Could have had many more if others could have finished their dinner. And I think this preseason tour, Jack, he's going to have a breakout and he's going to be one to stand out because he's a lot more time off than maybe some of the others that will be involved. So I think Kuluveski is one to watch this preseason tour. Whether that continues into the season is another question, because as we've seen with the 2 examples we gave, Jack, Lo Celso, and Lamella didn't quite carry over, but we are talking about the preseason tour, so that's why I think we might see a breakout star in Kuluveski this preseason.
Well, all you Decky lovers or haters, let us know in the comments whether you agree with Dave, if he could prove some people wrong or if he could play even better than he did this last season and could really show the Kuluveski that a lot of us, definitely are fans of him, do really believe in. I'm going to go with a youngster that I think could actually break out this season. It might not come as much of a surprise with the candidate that I've gone for. I've gone for Mikey Moore here, but I am going to explain why I think maybe some of the reasons I'm giving, maybe you haven't exactly heard before. I think so far he's actually played very well, and he's actually surprised me with how well he's played, considering he's actually been playing on the right side. I thought Mikey Moore would be given more opportunities on the left side, but he's made fine work on that right side and causing teams problems and creating chances. And this might be a stretch, but I do think he's actually performed better than the majority of the other wingers so far this preseason, that being Johnson, Werner, or Solomon, regardless of what side they've been playing on. I personally think Mikey Moore has been the more creative, the more exciting to watch between them. And he offers something different to them in that he isn't exactly as much of a pace merchant, or he isn't really as reliant on his pace as those 3 are. And he has that good ball control. He has excellent decision making in possession. He doesn't give it away for me nearly as often as guys like like Werner do or guys like Johnson do from time to time, which I think is more what Ange Postecoglou is looking for from his wingers. He wants them to take players on, but he also wants them to be smart in possession. He doesn't want them just giving it away unnecessarily, which can lead to dangerous counterattacks. And when you look at it between especially I think Werner as well as Johnson, he hasn't exactly been any of a worse finisher than the rest of them. He has popped up with some goals and has popped up in dangerous opportunities to score. I'm not saying that he is a better finisher than them, but I don't think he's necessarily performed worse than them in the finishing department. Where he has actually performed a bit better has really been in the crossing. He's much more creative in those final third moments where he does know how to put in, I think, a better timed ball or a better time cross, better weight on it. Sometimes you see Johnson or Werner, they can often overhit it, just completely miss all of the guys that are wide open in the box. And I think this preseason, Mikey Moore has shown that he has that sort of extra second, that extra time on the ball, and has that different type of creative brain than maybe most wingers do. I think Johnson and Werner are more your typical wingers that will just try to use their pace to get by their fullback and whip in across. Whereas Mikey Moore just does it maybe that slight bit differently because he has more of that creative type, number 10 brain, on that wing. And so you do see a variety of different ways that he does try to get it into the penalty area and cause problems. And this also might be an interesting thought, but I feel like he's just kind of developed or at least struck up a better partnership and relationship down that right side with Jed Spence than actually Porro and Johnson have so far this season. And also considering that Porro and Johnson played together last season, the majority of the season down that right side. So far, Jed Spence and Mikey Moore for me have been more exciting in these preseason games with the way that they've been combining. They offer something very different to each other. Jed Spence a bit more of that kind of pace and agility down the wing, who's also very good at taking on his man. Whereas Mikey Moore, like I said, isn't reliant on the pace, but has more of that creative number 10 like ability on that right side. And I think that's just offered something very different to what Porro and Johnson have been doing together. And like I said earlier, I think, again, I would have thought that Mikey Moore would have been more of a left wing kind of option for us this preseason to see where he fits in there. But he's actually, I think, done a service by showing what he can do on that right wing, despite being a right footed player and despite being a guy who would like to cut inside. I think that's already been a big surprise in my book with how well he has been playing there. And one of my final points really on Mikey Moore is what we saw with Lamine Yamal before with FC Barcelona as well as with Spain. Even though we knew how talented he was and we knew how young he was, his performances, Lamine Yamal's, were so good that they ended up being, too good of performances to ignore for managers like Xavi as well as for the Spanish national team, that even despite the age, despite the inexperience, they had to find a way to get him into the team. They had to find a way to give him those minutes because he had been playing so well. And I'm getting a similar vibe from Mikey Moore so far, where yes, we know he's young. Yes, we know he's inexperienced, but he's playing so well despite all that, that you kind of feel like you have to give him some moments and you have to give him some chances. So for me, Dave, the player that I expect to get a lot more minutes and maybe per starts in this upcoming season could be Mikey Moore, more than we might have expected.
Do you know what? I completely agree with you. I think come the back end of the campaign, I think we'll be surprised if he doesn't make the starting 11 because he's going to contribute that much over the season. I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of he's completely different to a Werner and Johnson. I think he has a lot more all-round attributes that's actually better suited to a winger than Werner and Johnson bring. I think they bring something very similar. Werner and Johnson are more impact subs, where I think Mikey Moore is more of a player that can get on the ball and actually help break down the opposition from the start of games and right throughout the game. So I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of Mikey Moore. Many people are probably expecting me to bring up a youngster in this video. However, I've done plenty of videos on them over the course of this summer, last summer, and over the season. So everyone knows my thoughts on these youngsters. Jack, he done very well. He done me proud, I must say. So guys, let us know your thoughts and your opinions on what Jack has to say on Mikey Moore.
And another player I might just quickly throw into the mixer here. This is a fringe player, and I'll only kind of briefly touch on him, but he has really impressed me. He's given me a lot to think about. And that's actually Alfie Devine. Honestly, Dave, completely forgot he even existed at one point this preseason, and he's given me a lot to think about with his recent performances. What I'd like about Alfie Devine so far is that maybe compared to someone like a James Maddison, I think he's worked actually harder out of possession and in possession than James Maddison has. When I look at Alfie Devine, he's done a really good job of showing for his teammates when they are looking for that option, when they need help. He's done a good job of running over to the other side, being that option in case they need it for a pass. But also out of possession, I feel like he's been working a lot harder than the other midfielders to try to win it back, and also just to be that guy that kind of starts or initiates the press, on the opposition team. And he's been very creative, in the opportunities that he's had in and around the final third. I've seen him try to slip in some of those passes in between the lines, through the opponent's penalty area. And he has that sort of eye for a pass between the lines that I do think you need as a midfielder in this Ange Postecoglou system. So for me, what I like about Alfie Devine so far is that he's worked really hard out of possession, giving us that sort of feeling that we can start presses and we can have energetic players in midfield. But then he's been an unselfish player where I think when guys need that option, they need someone to give it back to. He's not hiding. He's not looking for someone else to do the job for him. He's made that extra effort to be that creative player, to actually demand the ball off of someone else in case they find themselves in trouble. And you probably thought before this preseason that he would be shipped out on loan again. He still has plenty of time to develop. But I think with his recent performances, at least for me, with how well he's been playing, I wonder if he could earn himself a spot in the Europa League games, as like an impact sub, sort of off the bench. And as someone that maybe in case someone like Madison isn't performing well, or let's say his energy levels are a bit low, someone like Alfie Devine could step up and that end up being that sort of energetic, kind of a unselfish midfielder to pop in and offer something maybe different to a Madison. He could play as the number 10 alternative, and with how hard he works out of possession, he could even serve as a guy who could play next to Madison in like a number 8 style role. But that's just me on the fringe player that maybe not a lot of people would have thought about this upcoming season was Alfie Devine. So maybe he doesn't count as a fringe player. I think he does, just because I completely forgot he even existed at one point this preseason, and maybe he might earn himself a spot in the squad.
Alfie Devine has really surprised me this preseason, Jack, because when I spoke to the Plymouth fan about his time at Plymouth, he said that maybe he needs another low move out, that maybe he's not right at the level for Tottenham. But I agree with you. I think he's completely surprised me preseason in terms of both assets, both sides of the game, going forward, and also how hard he's working. And look, it'd be interesting to see whether it could be him kept around over the likes of Tyrese Hall, Donnelly, and people like that. I wouldn't write it off. He has more experience, and we know that that means a lot to Spurs fans, player with experience rather than giving youngsters an opportunity. So I wouldn't write off the possibility of Alfie Devine being kept around this season and being blooded in the likes of the Europa League games and stuff. However, I'll throw one more caveat in there. I do think it depends on Kuluveski's positioning in the team, which is probably bringing us back to the very beginning, because I do think he still has an opportunity at wing over the course of the season at some point. But we've also seen him in the middle preseason. If he's in the middle preseason, that's an extra body in there that Devine has to compete with. And I don't think he's quite at that level of Kuluveski or Madison yet, which might end up putting him back out on loan. But we'll wait and see. But I do think Kuluveski has impressed in there, I have to say. He's been very good going through the middle, linking up with the likes of Son and Madison. And I'd argue when you actually put him in around better players and closer to better players, he actually performs a lot better, and it shows that he has a really good footballing IQ. So, interesting one on Alfie Devine. Let's wait and see what happens. But guys, make sure you give us your comments in the comment section below. Of course, many people probably tune in expecting us to hit Jed Spence straight on the nail. But as you can see, we done a video there a few days ago. Loads of people seem to have watched it and loved it. So we didn't want to be repetitive. So we thought we would pull someone outside of that and go with maybe some different players. But of course, you can pick Jed Spence and give us your reasons why in the comments. So, guys, we want one youngster off you and one fringe player that you think is going to step up this preseason. Make sure you smash that like button. Hit subscribe if you're new to the ever-growing Irish Hotspur community. And we'll see you all back here later on for the debate show. Come on, you Spurs. In the mighty hands we trust, we never stop.